Kia ora koutou. I am Meg, and I am a freelance art educator, but I've worked in the museums and galleries sector for over 15 years in the UK, the US, and here in New Zealand. And I am recently a freelancer, and what this means is that I partner with organizations to connect content with audiences and in creative ways. And I'll talk a little bit about my own art practice, and we'll get into that. I'm also teaching adult art classes at Risingholme, bookmaking and collage primarily. And prior to moving here last year, I was actually art educator at the Carle Museum of Picture Book Art in Amherst, Massachusetts, which is just a really special place, and I loved being art educator there. So my interest in art education, I'm really passionate about improving accessibility and sustainability in art practices. This can take many forms, but for me it's about when we're making art, when we're being creative, there's a place for everyone to come in, and there's an access point for everyone to engage with whatever content we're exploring. I really love connecting people to creative experiences, especially if they don't consider themselves artistic or creative. That's when I really get excited. And I love exploring different learning opportunities and the different ways we can create those for people. I'm passionate about books. I think that's something a lot of us share today, especially picture books. And working at the Carle Museum, I got to work with lots of artists and illustrators and really understand how storytelling can be very multimodal, both in words and images. And then personally, I love hiking and I'm very interested in the natural world. And I bring this in because it comes into my own artistic practice. It comes into the way I teach as well. So this is a picture of the art studio at the Carle Museum of Picture Book Art. And I'll talk a little bit about kind of how I got here in a slightly winding way that reflects the path I took career-wise. There is a lot of continued learning I do, both formally and informally. So the first thing I've popped up here is while I was doing my master's degree, I was lucky enough to be part of a research project called The Qualities of Quality in Arts and Education. And that was at Project Zero, which is the Harvard Graduate School of Education's kind of research institute. And doing that, we really looked at how people define quality in arts education. And one of the huge findings was it's about how people talk about it. And it's about constantly questioning, thinking about what are we doing? Why are we doing it? So that kind of really influenced me going forward. I'm currently doing a certificate in early childhood care and education through Play Center while I take care of my young son. So there's always interesting learning opportunities wherever you are in your life. And then this picture I want to show because the art studio is this vast space and we were open every day the museum was, and we welcomed in whoever was interested in coming in and making art. Sometimes that was 5 people, sometimes it was 600. So you had to be ready for whatever happened on the day. So that meant having lots of materials, lots of different ways of introducing the artwork. And for me, it was all about having a big team around me and engaging in reflective practice. So my own art practice, I do a lot of papercraft, collage, and bookmaking. A lot of my practice came out of the day-to-day work I did at the Carle Museum. So we were constantly handling materials, sorting papers, picking glue off of that surface, washing brushes. And I actually found it was in the day-to-day work of constantly handling materials that the ideas would suddenly come to me about, oh, I wonder if you could use that material that way. Oh, we just used paper there. I wonder if we could reuse the paper in a different context. Oh, it's really interesting when these materials combine. So I always like to think of, I have my own creative practice, but actually it's a lot in the day-to-day work and the just handling of materials, talking to different people, working with different people that the ideas come. I've learned a lot from working with different artists and illustrators throughout my teaching career, and then developing my own lines of inquiry and kind of following those. There's not always much time for it. Some weeks I get an hour working with materials. Some weeks it's 4 hours. Usually it's not much more than that. But yeah, continuing to work in that way. And then something that I think is really important looking on my career is the opportunities to record and document what you do, whether it's working within an institution or whether it's doing more freelance work. So taking the opportunities to photograph, to write about the practice, because then I can look back and build on what I've done before. So the Carle Museum has a wonderful blog, and we would write articles about the different art projects we were working on. And that's still there. It's something I can go back to and refer to. We also had an opportunity to work on a book with an art educator, and I got to write some essays in that. And again, it was an amazing learning opportunity, but also it's something that I have and I can point to, and that really opens up opportunities for collaboration. So it can take many different forms, formal, informal, but I highly recommend documenting and recording what you're doing. Even if it feels really small, you can look back later and it's something to build upon. Yeah, and there's lots of ways into this career. I'll just say before I finish, I have a degree in education. You can train to be a teacher. You can do this through work experience. There are lots and lots of different ways in. Cool.